Welcome, visionaries and strategists, to a journey where uncertainty becomes your canvas for strategic mastery. Today, we're embarking on a mission to turn the unpredictable in life into the achievable. And I am so excited to help you to master plan for uncertain times. We're living in a day and time where things are going to be rocky for a while in corporate America as we're looking at what's actually impacting and happening in our world. So we've got to fasten our seatbelts because we're about to decode the art and the science of navigating uncertainty. We're going to craft a resilient strategy and help you master the roadmap to success as you face the unknown within your organization. Each of us, as we are working in corporate America or in our respective workplaces, maybe it's even a nonprofit, what's happening in the world has an absolute impact on what you actually do and how you show up for your organization. And so one of the things that we learned from the pandemic was that we have got to have a strong strategy. We've got to be able to get ahead and be able to plan for uncertainty. What's happening, what could possibly happen in the future. One of the things I've been a master at for quite some time is mastering the unknown, navigating change and transformation, and helping others to do the same thing. And the reason for that is because I've had to think ahead. What could possibly happen? What do I actually need to do differently? And then what is uncertainty in the context of today's business environment? If you are working in corporate America, then you understand that your organization may be pivoting. You may be changing products or entering new industries. Perhaps you're growing, or you are moving your business or some of your operations offshore. And so you may be ramping up a new project, sunsetting a particular program. All of those things happen, and they impact how your organization actually engages with your consumer, your end user, your customer. So uncertainty in today's business environment is something that we've got to get used to. We must become accustomed to being able to pivot, to navigate. One of the things I've seen that has really stifled a lot of leaders is their inability to flex, their inability to pivot, to move, to navigate uncertainty. They must have everything kind of laid out. 1 + 1 = 2. And when 1 + 1 does not equal 2, it becomes a challenge for them as things come up. Strong, effective leaders understand that we are working in an ever evolving workforce, and we must be able to navigate change and deal with uncertainty. It actually impacts your strategic decision making. You've got to be able to navigate those organizational dynamics where you are hyper aware of what's happening today in your organization, but you're also aware of what's happening with your customers. What are they thinking? What do they need? How are they evolving? How they actually do things? What does that impact, that change? What is the impact it has on them? As changes are occurring in the industry itself, and as it's occurring in the world itself, what do you need to get ready for? So for example, currently, we are in a war. We're going to be in a war for a very long time. And you may say, well, we're not actually in a war. Other countries aren't in a war. Guess what? It impacts you. When there is a war going on, it impacts your organization. So when you think about it, let's say that there is a plane that has to bring some products. Now we have gas, oil. It's going up because they have to go around. They're not able to go from point A to point B. They have to go around to avoid that war, which is impacting, costing more money. And it's showing up in your plane tickets, it's showing up in your gas, your, oil, whatever. So it actually has an impact on you and more money that you keep in your particular pocket, which means for some people, they begin to think about, is this something that I need to spend money on? Do I need to shift or change what I'm doing or how I'm actually doing it? So we're going to talk about and dive deep into the concept of strategic adaptability. Are you able to strategically adapt? And if so, how do you do that? And so that's something I want you to really begin to Google and really think about that. What is your plan? What's your process for doing just that? And so I would love to hear from some of you about what it is that you're actually doing, what has been your ability to move forward as it relates to that particular area. So again, how do you strategically adapt? What is it that you're doing? How do you do it? Who needs to be involved? Sometimes we say, you know what, it's just me. But if it actually impacts someone else, then perhaps they need to be a part of that conversation. Perhaps they need to be engaged in that discussion, so that you can actually put the best path and plan forward. I'm going to be sharing with you some tools today. And these tools, I want you to think about which ones you can actually use as you minimize risk, as you assess risk for your organization, as you identify opportunities and you make stronger decisions. This is something that's going to help you if you really take the time to really go back to your organization, sit down with your leaders, and you ask them, how do we make decisions around here? And you may say, well, we make them, this person is the owner and they make the decision. You may say, well, we collaborate. We bring all of the top leaders in a room and we have a discussion around this. And this is how we actually make the decision. Some people may say, no, what we do is we see, is it aligned to where we're actually going? And we make the decision that way. Some people will say, no, is it aligned with our values? And we make the decision that way. Some people have a very dynamic position. They have someone who actually represents the customer in the room, and that's how we make decisions. We have all of our key leaders. We have people who represent the customers. We have people who play the good side and the bad side, good cop, bad cop, or devil's advocate, or whatever the case is. And we look at our priorities, and maybe perhaps we revisit those. It's a quarterly discussion. I don't know, but I really want you to think about what it is that you do, how you actually make those decisions, and then move forward from there. When we're talking about strategic adaptability, I want you to think about, again, anticipating the change, proactively scanning, and creating a culture of continuous environmental scanning to identify what are the emerging trends. And I want you to look at this time together as just that. I want you to actually write down emerging trends. What are the potential disruptions? Just gave you one. What are the shifts in the landscape? Those are the things that when you can begin to detect those early, or look at those as early indicators, that we may actually need to make a shift. And if you began to look for the signs and look for the clues, one of the things that I've been so fortunate and blessed with is the ability to look at the signs and look at the clues. And I've always loved putting those puzzle pieces together, even as a kid. And so again, you're sensing those signals of change is what I like to call it. This is a signal of change, right? So you begin to anticipate that change and then see, okay, with that, now I know what I need to do differently. Flexibility in execution. Sometimes we get so caught up that we're going to execute this way. This is the way that we're going to execute. And it has to be this way. And we cannot do anything differently. And when that happens, what we see is that you become stuck. And when an organization is stuck, oh my gosh, it takes a lot to get unstuck, because sometimes we're so used to doing things a certain way that you continue to do that. So I want you to incorporate agile project management principles to enable quick adjustments, being able to, quickly adjust. It's going to be key for you in strategic execution. So I want you to empower your teams with the autonomy to make informed decisions. Do you have to make every single decision? Who can you delegate to? And in so doing, you're also developing this person to be a successor for your role. Or should a new division needs to stand up, perhaps this is a person who you can actually say, hey, they're in the pipeline for this particular position. And so you can reduce or minimize, I would say, those bottlenecks. We all have those bottlenecks, right? The people who, if they don't make the decisions don't get made. Everything must go through or flow through that person. And that is a hindrance to strategic decision making, or they're the be all end all. Even the CEO, if he's smart and wise, will listen to all the voices in the room, look at the data, see what his gut, his intuition is saying, what are the trends actually saying, and then make that decision. And perhaps he may say, this person is best to make this decision because guess what? They're doing the work every day, or they're an expert in this particular area. And so I'm taking their voice. I'm hearing what they actually say, and I'm using that to help influence my decision or to make my decision. One of the other things you can do is have a culture of continuous learning. Encourage your people to learn. Talk about what's happening in the or other in other divisions or departments. Talk about what's happening in the world. And sometimes you say, you know what, we don't want any controversy. And I can understand and appreciate that. But sometimes a different viewpoint, a different lens can be the trigger you need to do something else. I remember when I was much younger, when I actually worked in a law office from the time I was in high school, maybe 15, all the way through my college years, actually a little bit after college. And one of the things I loved was watching those just the healthy debates is what I would call them. Healthy debates, healthy discussions, and just talking about different topics. So you may have an attorney who is really strong at going to trial. They're a trial attorney. And you may have another attorney who's really strong at negotiations. And you have another attorney who may not necessarily be doing anything in that firm as it relates to this particular area, but their voice is important because they are a strategic thinker. You're continuously learning and you have your feedback loops to identify your successes and your failures, your gaps and your opportunities, so you can continuously improve. You have those strong players who you can actually bounce something off of. And that's going to help you when you're talking about strategic decision making and planning for uncertain times. You need people who are thinking differently than you, but they're sharp thinkers, very sharp thinkers. And that's the thing. So I want you to commit to ongoing learning, being adaptable again. I want you to commit to a mindset that values learning from experience as well as successes and failures, and not getting stuck because you're in an uncertain time of just, we're only going to learn from our successes and we're not going to take any risk, because not taking any risk in itself is failure. Sometimes the best thing you can do is to say, you know what, I'm going to go ahead and make that decision, and I'm going to take this particular risk, and I may fail, but that's okay. And you're going to apply those lessons to future strategies. Encouraging a knowledge of the culture, rather, to share knowledge and cross-functional collaboration to enhance your collective adaptability is key as well. And so one of the things you want to do is, when you're talking about, I'm going to say flexible resource allocation, is thinking about the ability to reallocate resources dynamically based on shifting priorities. What does that mean? Perhaps you say, you know what, we got $10 million for this project, and this is going to be a go. Well, now, because of the times we're in, like right now, AI is huge. So you're seeing some organizations say we need to reallocate our resources for us to be able to compete in the future. And especially in uncertain times, we've got to be able to invest in this new technology. So this program that we had planned, or this project that we had planned, or initiative or whatever, that was going to cost us $10 million. Now what we're going to do is we need to shift that, and perhaps we can still do it, but we're going to be doing it at $1 million level. We're going to take that 9 million and we're going to find 5 million from somewhere else. Now we got 14 million, and we're going to pull some more money from somewhere else, because now we need to invest $100 million into this, because this is going to be how we excel and we thrive in the future. It's going to be some tough calls, some hard decision making that's going to be needed when you're talking about optimizing your resources. And you're talking about resource allocation, being flexible with the resources that you have. That is going to be key as you're talking about how do we actually move forward and we plan for uncertain times, for us to be able to sustain as an organization and even grow and thrive in this uncertain time here. What do we need to do differently? And as a leader of a function, especially as a P&L leader, I would encourage you to begin to think outside the box and bring in those key players who have a penchant for thinking creatively, and then those people on your team who are your innovators. And you need to be able to identify, who are my creators, who are my innovators, who are my executors. And those are three different things, who can implement, who can execute, and then who can drive for continuous improvement, right? So when you understand who your key players are and you're optimizing your talent, organizing your people, or strategizing how you actually use them, perhaps they're not aligned to a particular thing, so to speak, but you are aligning them to how do they actually work, what are their areas of genius, and how do they actually show up. That's going to be key as you're mastering your plan for the future, as you begin to see things and see people differently. You begin to see, okay, this person is best for this. And I'm going to listen, keep an ear out for what we're talking about as an organization, and then think about how can I pull them? How can I grab them? How can I move them forward in such a way that really helps our organization to show up differently? When you're talking about adaptability from leadership, it starts at the top and they set the tone for the entire organization. Part of that is aligning the organizational vision with the needs for ongoing adaptability, emphasizing the importance of agility in today's time and achieving your strategic objectives. That is actually going to be one of your key things. I want you to begin to think about your alliances. Even as a leader, who are you aligned to? What are your partnerships that you actually have, internal as well as those external entities that you can partner with to enhance your strategic capabilities? One of the things I love is to see what it looks like competing organizations coming together. So when you think about like Uncle Nearest Whiskey, and then you have Jack Daniels, and they're coming together and they're doing some things together. Why? It has a stronger impact. It's going to help both of those organizations to be stronger in the future. And it really takes a leader who is forward thinking to be able to think about, hey, how can this be a competitive advantage for us? Instead of us competing, we're actually partnering. We're not sharing any trade secrets or anything like that, but we are coming together for something. And that, again, requires us to really look at things differently, look at people and organizations differently, and gain a strategic edge by staying ahead of the curve, anticipating and responding to the market changes faster than your competitors. That's the key. How can we anticipate and respond faster? It's not just anticipating, but it's having that courage to move, that courage to act without having everything laid out perfectly for you. So let's talk about some tools that you can actually use to help be a compass and a guide for you as you master uncertain times. I have some tools that I want to share, and let me get to those really quickly here. One of them I loved for quite a number of years, is a SWOT, a good old fashioned SWOT analysis. You have some organizations and leaders who are still using them, and you have others who don't. But what are your strengths? What were they? What are they today? Are they the same? And if so, why? Do they need to be the same? Do they need to be different? Because a strength yesterday is not necessarily a strength in today's market. A strength at this company, for example, perhaps I can remember in my career, a strength at one company of being vocal, having an opinion, being creative, taking risks, being bold was appreciated. You get to another company and they want you to be silent and to be quiet. And that is no longer a strength at that organization because they don't have an appreciation for that. So what are your strengths? What are your weaknesses? What are your opportunities? And what are your threats? So you're going to analyze your internal strengths and weaknesses. And I encourage you to do this as a leader, even with your particular function. And encourage your peers to actually do this as well. And then see if you can get in front of the top person in your organization and discuss this from your view and see what happens if they agree. You don't always need an external consultant. Sometimes you just need to use what you have and be bold enough to raise your hand and to drive it forward. So again, you're going to analyze your strengths and your weaknesses as well as your opportunities and your threats. And it's going to give you a holistic view for strategic planning. So that's the now. Another one that I love, and especially coming from out of the pandemic, is scenario planning. And that's exploring and preparing for various potential future scenarios. If this were to happen, then this is what we're going to do. And what we see is that a lot of organizations that are strong are really getting into that scenario planning. They're beginning to really think through, if this were to happen again, if we were to go again and this were to happen, are we prepared? If something worse were to happen, are we prepared? So again, what are your future scenarios, and plan for various future scenarios? What we're seeing is that a lot of organizations, since we're no longer in the office, they don't really do a lot of scenario planning. And so I want you to think about that, creating and analyzing different scenarios for potential changes in the business environment. And so again, you're thinking about the business environment that has an influence, doesn't have to be great, but it does have an influence on your organization. What would happen? So just play out those various scenarios, talk through it, see if it makes sense. What's the cost behind that? I want you to look at another one I love is just a regular old analysis, and you're looking at the various external factors. So one of the things that we don't really think about, and people ask me all the time, is how do you think like this? I am a strategist at core. And so one of the things I want you to think about, politics. If this person were to be in office, what would happen? If we were to align forces with this particular country, what would happen? If we did, what would happen? So what are the factors that impact the organization? Political, economic, social, not saying anything. We saw a few years back, not saying anything or taking a stance had a direct influence in your organization. Technological. We see AI is taking over. So technological, environmental, and legal. The legal factors. So as rulings are coming down, decisions are being made, they're influencing your strategic decisions for your particular organization, what you can do, what you can't do, what you have to report, what you no longer have to report, what's being embedded in, is exposing who are you really? Are you doing certain things because you had to? Are you doing them now because you want to? That has a factor. McKinsey and business, you hear all the time. People love the McKinsey framework. So I want you to think about I believe it's the 7S. So strategy, structure, systems, shared values, style, staff, and skills. How effective are they for strategy implementation? So those organizational elements. One of the things I think we discount when you're looking at leaders is the style and approach of that leader. The staff, what certain people can get done, who's over certain roles, positions, functions, because some people have a taskmaster personality. Do you take that into consideration? Some people have this particular skill or experience, and they are showing up from that particular lens, which has an impact on your organization. One of the things I found is I love transformation, personal and organizational transformation. So I am always, as my clients say, focused on values. I'm focused on leadership, innovation, transformation, generating revenue. That's what they would say, my core. So when I'm showing up with the lens of that. That's the way I'm naturally wired to think. And I think about strategy from those particular lens. And I am influencing from that particular lens as well. Do a risk assessment matrix. When was the last time you did a good old-fashioned risk assessment? So it's assessing the likelihood and impact of various risks and helping prioritize them for mitigation strategies. That's another tool you can use. Old-fashioned balanced scorecard. I remember years ago being in a meeting and we are arguing about the balanced scorecard and having a balanced scorecard, using a balanced scorecard as we were having a new leader that was coming into the organization and having to be for and against it. And if so, what was going to go on that balanced scorecard? So it's measuring your organizational performance against multiple perspectives. And you develop that key performance indicators. aligned with your strategic objectives. In this case, the leaders were saying, we don't really have a mission. We don't really have a vision for a large Fortune 500 organization. It was very interesting. But you're going to take a balanced approach to measurement. Another tool that you can use. How many of you are actually using these tools in your organization today? Why or why not? Especially if you're in operations, HR, strategy. What are you using? Or do you just go with the flow of that leader? One of the tools I absolutely love is a decision matrix. I have my own decision matrix that I use and I share with those who I actually work with. And one of the things is to help you to prioritize different options, to help you compare and prioritize different options. So you're using criteria such as feasibility, impact, strategic alignment to objectively evaluate potential strategic decisions. Going back to the mind mapping, I love mind mapping to help you to organize and generate your ideas. And I use this tool probably 2 or 3 times a week minimum within my own life. And so I'm always using the mind map to help me explore and structure strategic ideas. And it helps me to foster creativity and clarity and be a little bit more organized in my thoughts. Seeing where this could potentially go if I go down this particular path here and what all is involved in that particular thing. So as you can see, there are a number of tools. Some we didn't even talk about today, but there are a number of tools that you can actually use as you were talking about strategic planning for uncertain times. While we've talked about a lot, there are many more that we haven't talked about, but what I want you to do is just pick a couple. Just pick a couple and sit down and do this by yourself. Do it with a peer, do it with your team, and see what you actually come up with. The idea, though, is begin to play offense, not defense, as you're talking about these uncertain times. And so what happens is we're sitting and we're so busy doing the work that we never really stop to plan, and we have overspent. We've overutilized our resources. We have not really prepared for something that should not have caught us off guard. I'm talking too fast. That should not have caught us off guard. And so as you begin to take a more strategic approach, especially at the beginning of the year, even if you deal in a fiscal year instead of a calendar year, but you're beginning to, again, look and see, showing up as a leader, as an executive, and thinking through what is the potential impact of this. You do not have to be at that C-level or SVP to begin thinking about this way. And again, showing up, interacting, and engaging with your leaders in a different way. You're having a healthier conversation, a stronger conversation, showing why you deserve a seat at the table, and you have some tools and resources, and you've already begun to do the work. So you're not just saying, hey, perhaps this is something we should do, or perhaps this is something that I saw, but I've already begun to do it for my particular function. And this is what I'm actually seeing. This is what I think we should actually do. Am I right? Am I onto something here? Anything you would say about this? Hey, I would love to hear what your thoughts are on this. You never know what they're going to say. You never know if it will give them something to really think about. And they can go have some more conversations, bigger discussions, healthier discussions to really position your organization to maximize potential, performance, productivity, and profitability, right? Because that's all what it's about, is showing up in such a way that we can make ourselves stronger and maximize our potential, make our organization stronger, and have a larger impact on the world in which we live, because it impacts all of us. So what you're doing at your organization absolutely has an impact on your neighbor. And I want you to remember that. I'm Dr. Cheryl M. Payne. I'm an expert in leadership and culture and helping organizations to navigate transformational change. I'll see you guys back here in a couple of weeks with our next topic. And I cannot wait to share more with you on this particular topic as well in our newsletter. So if you're not on our newsletter, on our list for our newsletter, you may want to make sure that you are plugged in so you have more tools and techniques and strategies you can actually use within your organization. I'll see you guys back here next time. Take care and take charge.